All right, guys, we are back. This is set up enough to where we can start to remove this, and I just tested it up here. That's why we have clay gone. But I wanted to save this part so you can see what we're doing. We're removing the clay wall that separated the medium line, and we have this clay up here. It's starting to get so dried that we might have to remove that as well and just rebuild a wall for this half. And then we'll have to do the same process where we clean it up and get it ready. But we're only building one clay wall this time, instead of having to do the back one as well. So because we use the release and everything, it separates very easily from the mold half. What you see in these little tiny feathered areas, which you might not see on the camera since it's so fine, that's actually the sealer that we sprayed on it. And like I said, this stuff is so cheap that it doesn't pay to really try to salvage it, although you could if you needed to, but it can't be melted down like Shavant or anything like that to clean it. So that's why I usually just throw it away, and it is a cheap clay. It's for 50 pounds of it, it's only 30 bucks. So rather than reuse it and get all the bits of junk that we normally do in it, it's better to just sometimes just get rid of it. And this is really getting rigid up here, so we're going to go ahead and remove that as well. We'll just replace that with some fresh clay. And sometimes you do get some sticking because this is a very sticky clay by nature. So whatever we can't get off with our fingers, we'll go back in and scrub out with the brushes to clean it up. And we also created this front wall, which we won't have to recreate that for the piece. It's kind of awkward to have to move this now, but we'll definitely turn it around when we get to the front. You'll see what I'm talking about. We're just going to remove all of this clay. Makes it real easy because we put that acrylic sealer on the monster clay sculpt. So by doing this, we get all of that junk off of the original clay without damaging the clay sculpt. Even all this fine detail down here, that'll just clean up perfectly. And again, if we have to use anything, what I'll usually use at this point to get that clay residue off is actually just a shortened chip brush where it's been cut off at about half. And you can see there, it's just been cut off. It doesn't have to look pretty or anything like that. But by the time we take that and dampen it slightly and just start scrubbing at it, all the residue that's on the mold comes right off. All the clay residue comes off pretty easy, and the crystal clear that we sprayed on there comes off quite easy as well. And as sometimes happen, life stuff came up and we had to take a short break.
A longer break today.
Longer break. So we may have to continue the front half tomorrow, but that'll go a lot quicker than even doing this second half of the back, because the setup sometimes takes time. But that guarantees you're going to have a good finishing. So.
And we didn't cut this off the base here.
Yeah, probably. It's getting too dry to reuse. But if you very gently work off all of that residue, by the time you spray it down and get the sealer and the wax on this half, you won't be able to tell. It doesn't fill in any details. It kind of leaves an ashy coat on it, but it will come off clean. Even all of the residue from when we got a little bit of the plaster from the first side. And I'm sorry this has turned out to be such a marathon molding job, but sometimes that happens, and I'd rather take time at this point to do it right and pretty much know that, hey, when we demold this, it's going to come off without a hitch. because you do not fast forget when you have a mold issue, whether it's a lock or have a bunch of material that you wind up having to clean out.
You have a trash bag somewhere?
It's a really
In
big
the
one
first
there.
drawer.
You have another cutoff from
I can get you whatever you need.
Thank you.
But at the end of the day, this is going to clean up a lot faster.
It's angled to begin with.
And you can see because of the coat that we put on this, that
The static is picking up.
flat 11, all of this stuff is basically just rubbing right off.
And paper towel.
I'll get you one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sometimes it does pay to go in with a clean brush or something that's a little bit softer, just to wiggle down into those little cracks and crevices. And we're basically just scrubbing out all of that old clay that was from the first half. You really got to watch fingernails and edges of the brush and stuff like that.
Barrel.
Yes, the metal part of the brush is that's gonna be your number one reason for screwing up a piece like this.
If you want back here, there's just a thing.
Can't play.
But the idea is to just take your time and do it right. Don't rush through the molding process. I mean, you want to go as quickly as you can because every shift or when it's starting to dry, if it shrinks away from your piece, you'll have unsightly gaps in your mold that you can actually have the other half of the plaster go into. Or when you do your casting, it's where your latex is going to seep, and then you're going to have an unsightly, sloppy mold line that you have to clean up. And it's not the easiest thing, even in something like this that's a latex. You think that it would be such an easy material to clean up. It's not. But you see how that line there is really cleaning up nice. That gives us that nice cutting edge between the halves. And using a brush too pretty much guarantees you're not going to be screwing up your piece using a metal tool or even a mixing stick or a tongue depressor. And if you scrub carefully, you're not going to disturb your detail layer because, of course, you have that sealer coat on it, the 1311.
Need a fresh water?
Yeah, we'll probably need some clean stuff.
Be right back.
There's that. Okay, wait, that-
No. There you go.
Debbie, thank you for joining. Thank you everyone else for joining as well. I'm glad you're finding it interesting. I'm always thinking that there couldn't be anyone that finds it as cool as I do, because it's such a kind of a monotonous task, but it kind of always surprises me when people are into this stuff and like to see the process. It can often be drawn out in a very long process, but at the same time, to me, when I was younger, I loved watching videos like this. I would just get so into them and watch the videos over and over again. I had one of, actually he's a friend of mine today, but back then he was just this makeup god. Gonna embarrass him. Yeah, Michael Burnett. Many of you know him. Michael Burnett Productions. He does special effects makeup, and he's done it for years, and he was one of the guys good enough to have a great video back in the day, and I'd watch that over and over again. Residue.
Yep. Among other things. Big old crumb of it.
But you see how that stuff, if you're careful, you can clean it up with very little effort.
And that's why we love wood clay.
Yeah. Wood clay, developed for Walt Disney for the animatronics and sculpts that they did. WED actually, is there anyone that knows what WED in WED clay actually stands for? I know some of the pros will, but I wonder if other people might know.
Yeah.
Is that cutting edge over there looking pretty good?
Yeah. So far. I've still got some goop to remove.
Yeah.
Nobody answered your wet question.
Okay. We'll give it time. We'll be here all night. Try the veal.
You have something? Yeah, some of the cell contact tools.
Is it stuck somewhere?
Here and here.
What is it?
It's part of the mold wall, but it was
Oh.
shoved up in there.
Under the front?
Here. There.
We'll brush it out. Don't worry about it. I don't want to mess up those gills at all. Those gills took so much, and they were so detailed and so small. Yeah, you don't probably need to use a tool to get that out. If you're careful, you can dig it out with the brush, and the bristles are always going to be more delicate than a tool, even a rubber tool.
Need a paper towel?
Please.
Okey-dokey.
2, please.
One for you.
Thank you.
Walter Elias Disney is what it means.
Yes. Who said that?
That was Rebecca McGillicuddy.
McGillicuddy. Yes. You are correct. 500 points. Yeah, that was developed for Disney, and everyone loved it so much.
Yeah. Someone said, hi from Italy, you're a great artist.
Thank you very much. We had someone from the UK last time we did this. So we're getting them from all over the world now. That's cool.
I don't know who that was. Someone's phone did a thing.
That was me. No offense, but I'm going to ignore it for now. If you're sending me private messages and can see this video, I will get with you, I promise.
Denise Leffler, Oster. I apologize if I mess up anyone's names, by the way. We've already established I'm very bad at names. Said, hi, Scotty. Mark Draven said, hello from ... Well, not that far. Julian White says, UK, Essex. Cindy Grady says, fascinating. Carl Stout says, Connecticut.
Wow. All over the United States and all over the world, really. Well, I hope that this is interesting for everyone. Continues to be interesting. Just continuing to clean and get it ready for the next part. You know, we probably need another clean cup of water to do the final cleanup. How's that side looking?
I'm down to about here.
Slowly? I'll jump in there.
There's a couple of the frills that, you know, they end under this.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get the.
Gotcha. Well, I'll check it out.
Denise says, it's always wonderful seeing you work your magic. We have missed it.
I miss seeing you guys too.
Julian White says, informative, inspirational, and thank you.
You are totally welcome. I'm glad it's helping. You know, if it helps you guys with your projects as well, that's awesome. Very, very cool. Sometimes you only see what you have to go back over again once the wet clay starts to dry a little bit. Then it gets all ashy and you know where you need to go back and hit it again with the brush and a little cleaner water. You never completely get the residue out, but it's mostly like a little powder coating that's on it. Once you put the sealer back on for the wet clay and the release, it kind of takes that down and turns it translucent again. But as long as you get most of it out of the detail, the worst thing is you spend so much time working the details and then you get wet clay in it, and if you don't clean it out, all that detail you sculpted is useless.
Do you want to help where I'm standing, Scott, so you can get it from this angle?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably need to do that and jump over to Ted's side as well. But we're getting most of it. Oh, that's not terrible.
Not at all.
A little bit. Okay, this line here is pretty clean now. So I'm going to take a look at this flip side area and see what we have to deal with here, because this is all the filigree kind of gill work that we have. And once I get this cleaned up on this side and we're done on over here, I will try to take the camera so you can see a little bit of the details on this side. But really, it's not going to be too important until we get to the front side of the mold. That's when it's really going to be necessary to make sure we got everything off. You guys doing okay?
Oh. Just let me know if you need more paper towels or water. Or...
Paper towels right there.
We'll have some cleanup that we have to do on the gill work, no matter what. But that's easier in something like this. Resin, it's a breeze because you just cut away what you don't need. But with this, we'll have to be very careful with this, with the latex. Sometimes you can go in with a sharp blade or some nips. Cuticle nips work really well. Or you can hit it with, you know, like a Dremel. Sometimes if you operate a Dremel at low speed, you can grind off the little nublins. I don't like doing that because sometimes it can catch and tear.
I got the pie out.
Okay.
But it's just cleaning up all these details. Almost there.
Carl Stout says you're going to need a stronger table when you're done. That's going to weigh a ton.
Yeah, well, we're almost through. We got about, what, 2/3 through a 50-pound bag.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have probably close to about 75 to 100 pounds of material in this by the time we're done.
Plus the clay.
Plus the clay, yeah. Thankfully, that's coming out. That's always the celebration.
And we know this table can withstand amber and then a very large piece that she had to demold. So
Yes.
it's sturdy. We've tested it.
We did have some spill through with the plaster over here.
Hmm?
The Hydrocal.
Yeah.
We had some leakage through the gills.
Oh.
So I must have had a little
Pinhole.
seam area. We are getting there.
Should we start cutting up quick?
Well, it's already cut.
Oh, it is?
Good.
Thought we had to do it all over again.
Yep.
We're going to clean as much as we can of the white powdery leftoverness.
Do you want me to bring the camera around so they can see what you're talking about?
Not at this point. This
Okay.
is just cleaning up the basic stuff that's still left in the gills. But we're going to really focus on this half. So they're getting the clay back out, and we'll rebuild this wall on this side and a little bit of the clay that will form the skirt.
Getting all sad and goofy. It got a little mushed.
A little bit.
I think this should be enough, don't you?
Yeah, okay.
Alright. This one just wrong.
Can you hand me a dry 1-inch brush?
Right. Cut or no?
No,
Okay.
I will take uncut. What I'm doing is just dusting this area in here real quick so we can start fresh.
Should we do anything about the bottom or just?
Yeah, we'll probably cut that off. It's maybe a little too leathery, so.
It's a lucky piece of clay.
Yeah, they all are.
Cleaned up and ready for round 2. We'll still have to do it one time more. Once we get this off, we'll have to do a final scrubbing on all this stuff just to make sure it's clean. But then that's the last time we have to deal with the wet clay.
Well, for this project.
Yeah,
Well, for this particular piece of this project.
yeah, because then we're on to hands
Right.
and feet and body.
That'll be fun.
At least you already have the hands to mold over.
Different pose.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, front is looking pretty much back to normal.
That's sweet.
Scrapey, it's over there.
Hi. There you go. Oh, look. A couple of scrapey things.
Yay, scrapey things.
basically what we're looking at doing is just mirroring this for the most part. This side that we have finished, we're going to be mirroring to this side, but we do have to pay attention to the high areas, because theoretically our mold line should be at the highest point. That way we're not having any kind of locking or undercuts that we have to worry about.
I'm sorry, Julian. We're using wet clay to make the mold. Oh, if you're asking what we use for the master, that's monster clay.
Probably right here. Back a little bit. Well,
No,
we...
that'd be.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Michael
good. Right there,
Raymond
perfect.
says hi from Ma, and Lurlang King says, have you eaten anything? You've been working a long time.
I had some boba. Where did we get this from, Chelsea?
Calla Lotus.
Calla Lotus. They're in Ocala here, and they sell boba teas and all sorts of fine Asian grocery items.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Not sponsored officially, but they keep us going.
Your taro's the best.
Yes, taro with pomegranate boba.
I disagree. I think it's best with just the normal tapioca.
Yes. But it keeps us going, keeps us energized.
It's all the sugar that's in it.
Yes.
Woohoo!
And the secret ingredient is crack.
Oh.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Leave that to the professionals.
I know this is exciting. You're seeing the second side being done for the day. But it is exciting because we're going to be another third towards actually being able to demold it and cast it.
You trim off a little bit at the bottom, you'll be able to bump it down a little bit lower. It trims off a little bit toward the bottom, we'll be able to bump it.
We'll need to get our mixing sticks ready for supporting this wall now.
Oh, grab some.
This is going to be a massive mold. And typically, you know, like if we were to do a regular zombie mask or a monster mask, we wouldn't have this back fin to contend with, and that's why we're adding so much extra mass. Because ordinarily you would just have a front and a back, but we have to build a wall for that back, so you're adding many, many pounds just for that.
Grayson said sugar is power.
Some might even say a superpower.
We're going to start that discussion again.
Yes, why not?
Very circular.
Yeah, I would get that in position first, and then kind of press the other in. Well, we need like the big mixing sticks to lay across the front wall there.
Make some sticks.
Yes.
Close the door.
Jog this way just a touch. This will follow this way, and then finally joining up here. That way we'll be against that back edge. That should be good. With less chance of locking anywhere.
Rita Archel says Virginia here.
Virginia reporting in. Very good to see everyone visiting us here.
I might have to start heading out soon.
Yeah. We'll start supporting this end in here so it doesn't flop over on us. Just putting a few wedges of clay in front of this wall to keep it from slopping. Slopping and flopping. It just reinforces it a little bit more. Now. Alrighty. Everybody say bye to Chelsea. She's leaving for the day. But you will see more of her in a future episode of Craziness in the Shop.
It was nice meeting everyone.
Thanks for your help today, Chelsea.
Sure thing. See you soon. Have a nice time molding.
We'll try.
And don't let the crazy get you.
Like, that's an option. Oh, it will. Right here.
Yes, I think that adds noise.
No. Not too bad. Watch the nail. That's the thing, we all have to trim our nails way back when we start doing this stuff. Okay, that's looking good. And we'll have to build this area up a little bit here. Maybe like a little wedge or something.
Mr. Antilles?
Yes. a little bit more.
Pull that one out.
Enough there, I think. I'll give us plenty. When I'm doing this edge, this fine edge, if I'm using a wooden tool, I go right up to the edge of that line, but I don't touch the clay with the actual wood tool. Kind of going right up to the edge and allowing the tool to kind of push the clay to that joint. So it's just slight pressure, but you never actually put the tool up against the clay. That way you don't damage your line there. You realize how little effort you really need to take with smoothing the clay. If that clay gets thin enough, it actually winds up pilling and breaking off without you really touching the sculpt. That makes it so much easier when you have to go back in and use your brushes to clean up that mold line. I'm seeing light through under that first set of gills still. Again, just slight backing and then pushing this in. Now it's sealed on this side at least. You can almost feel when you're using the wood tools against the wet clay and the monster clay, once it gets close to the monster clay, it's almost like gives you more resistance. And that's usually my cue to stop pushing on it. Because you can actually feel that you're getting close.
All right.
Put them next to each other. Because one is a little bit yellow. Yeah, that's the water, the taller one.
Okay. Oh. Walkie there.
And again, the rule of doing this stuff is keep everything that you possibly can at that nice 90 degree. And then actually relax against the non-detail area a little bit. Pretty well supported there. Oh yeah. Just cleaning up that edge, taking the wobble out of it, any kind of leveling issues, and slight pressure. So any kind of joints that we have still in there that might be flopping around, we can strengthen them up a little bit.
Brace on top. Starting to
Here.
get more insane. This isn't as supported as what it look like right here.
Okay, we'll throw some more clay on it.
Ooh, looky there.
Okay, so it's basically straightened in place. Now we got to go back and do the brushwork like we did on the first side. Ted is going to be just reinforcing that just a tad.
Press fingerprints in, right?
What's that?
Probably going to press fingerprints in, right?
Oh, just a few.
I warned you. I warned you. But did you listen to me? No. You never know.
Work those seams. Those orange sponges we have over here, right? Yes.
There.
Swipe on this here. We'll have to go finer chisel, I think. Takes multiple passes to get this leveled out properly. First one kind of just is the broad stroke, which gets most of the materials off that you want off of it, and then you go back and with a finer clean brush you chisel it out almost. Yep, they will definitely help. Someone mentioned maybe it'd be the keys on that side. Yes, that'll definitely help. You want ultimate control over your keys, but
Is that a little hole in there that needs to be filled?
can't tell. It doesn't look like a hole, but there's some material there. Just new.
Okay.
That's right. We have a man after my own heart here, Mike Webb, who's saying if you don't have a good mold, you are absolutely right. All the time that you take on the sculpt is waste at that point. And I've seen that happen. And it's horrible. You spend all that time and then at the end of the day you have nothing to show for it because a mold locked or you had bad mold release, things like that. It always helps to have different angles on the same problem. Ted and I are both working different angles and seeing things differently than from the other's perspective. And where he might miss something, I'll catch it, and where I'm missing something, he'll catch it. So it works out. Not a seam or just a hard bit?
I think it was a nudge from something that dug into the clay.
Gotcha.
There.
Yeah.
And it's just about this.
One side can be so easy because you're right-handed, and it's like, son of a gun. It'll be alright.
Yeah, so then you take the wire brush to it and smooth everything out.
No wire brushes. No wire hangers, no wire brushes. Now I get to chase gnats. Gnats are starting to land in it.
Nice.
Where did they come from? Other gnats, silly. As long as they don't land and become a permanent resident.
Sacrifices must be made.
Okay. little wet in that area. And of course, it's right where there's detail. If you go back in with a soft dry brush, you can get most of that crap out. But you got to keep it fairly dry. Probably be able to get the last of the residue out once it dries. Okay, pop over on this side to check out the heels. Mostly it's just little minor dust and clay that's settled, but gotta get right up on that edge. Otherwise you'll have a big texture change when you hit one side or the other. Some things you just can't help. If there's a lot of texture, sometimes you just have to wind up cleaning it up in post when it's all done. But the more you can do now, the better it's going to be.
Because the less you have to do on every single copy you make.
Right. It's okay if you got to make one, but what if you got to make 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? All those minutes add up. Huh?
I'm talking to you, false rifles.
Yeah, one should endeavor not to have to clean anything in post. Basically working this brush with the chisel tip, kind of just laying it up against the clay line between the clay and the sculpt and pulling out a little bit, and that gets most of the clay and the junk out of the gills.
Let's head over there, William Ramsey comment on the video. But I didn't actually see a comment showing him. Unless it's badly delayed.
Could have been on one of the other ones too. We've done a record number today.
3 so far?
And not to be a negative Nelly, but we may very well have to carry it in tomorrow, depending on how far we get from this, because we did take a little bit longer than I thought on the other half. But again, we don't want to rush this to where it's not right. I'd rather get rest tonight and then hit the front tomorrow and make sure it's going to be done right, because you really got to be frosty when you're doing all that detail. But this is kind of tedious working in the gill lines, because we don't want to have a bunch of air bubbles and polyps in there when we actually start doing the castings. But they should come out very organic. So you should put that chisel tip of the brush and lay it flat against the gills, and then kind of push forward. You're taking all the clay out of that detail in a good way. So many of you have heard, I've put posts out about vendors and sponsors and everything like that. We're finalizing both the vendor package and the sponsor package. So if you are interested in getting a table and you haven't done so already, you can email me, scottfenster@gmail.com. And if you do that, I will get you on the list to be a vendor. We only have 70 regular spots, 10 by 10 spots, and then we have food truck spots available as well. Limited number of those. And we have to keep a certain number for presenting sponsors and other sponsors, so we have to be careful how many tables we actually sell out. But we've got everyone that has already sent in your email to me, I've got it. So you don't have to worry about resending, unless you're like me and you're just rather be doubly sure. But if anyone else is interested or you want to be a sponsor of the event, sponsorship packages start as low as $250. And it's going to be really, really cool, because one of the things that we're giving away as sponsors is if you sponsor the event, your name is going to appear in the program. And many of you have seen the artwork that Chelsea, the girl that was here, did for the event. It's beautiful, beautiful work. But we're doing the actual program to resemble Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. So it's going to have that same kind of cover and interior ads and stuff like that. Ads for different items that we're going to be selling at the show, like T-shirts and pins and all sorts of stuff. But I would definitely say, if you're interested, now is the time, because it's getting more speed. One of our good friends is going to be bringing it to the Chamber of Commerce here, get some local interest. But we also want to show people that are from around the country that are collecting this stuff and into this. We want it to be a birthday celebration from around the world if we had our druthers. But if you are so inclined, share. Tell your friends about this event. This event for fans, by fans.
Scissors.
Just cleaning this up. Now that this is kind of ashed over, we're just getting some of that dry ash out of there. Almost like a high-tech feather duster. Just cleaning that up. Okay. So now that we have that, we've got our key.
Oh yeah.
We need a key.
Where?
A key.
A key.
A key. I had another one. What happened to that other keying tool? It was a nice one with the rounded end.
This one.
That might be it.
Oh, we also need pry points.
On this side. Mm-hmm. We'll need pry points on this. Mm-hmm. So, we'll cut that. will be just enough of a key to grab that material.
What do you know? Oh, it's almost right size.
And there are a lot of different ways you can do keys. You can do this, which is a negative impression. You can also do a positive that kind of is like an added little contour that you put in it. It just depends on your style, what you're doing. Sometimes it's easier to use the other kind of keys when it's laying down horizontally. But since this is...
There's even the pen cap keys.
Yeah, we use all different types of keys for different kinds of rubbers or molds. That's basically all we need to do. It just stops the rigid mold halves from sliding up against each other and falling out of lock. But when you have something like this and then you strap it with a locking mold strap, that's usually enough to give it the tooth from it shifting. And even though, because we want to be sure to get this out without it wrecking the edges and stuff, so we didn't put keys into this half, we're still going to have our pry points. But at least if it's keyed all along the front and then you have the strap on it, the chance of this shifting left and right or up and down is very, very slim.
So, how many pry points do you think? 1, 2, 3?
Well, placing pry points is always the issue because you definitely want to have even. We're going to definitely pull probably the front first and then separate that. I think, I mean, I think if we had, this is really close there.
So maybe there?
Yeah. We're going to probably, well, it's pretty thick here. I think we could do one here.
Okay.
And then we'll do one about midway and then maybe right up here.
Okay. There's 2 right here.
Oh, you got them. They only have to be about a ½ inch thick. So what I usually do is you get the wedge shape and then you flatten it off like so. And then using your clean knife, which I have to clean mine because it isn't a clean knife.
Anymore.
It has been well worn today. That's what we're going to do while we take a break for the sealer and the wax to dry, is get to clean tools and move stuff and get ready for clay.
No.
For Hydrocal. So we're just going to take this tool and go a little bit at a draft, which, an angle away from the pry point. So it's kind of like the hood of a car. Everything has draft. So it's nice and away from everything. And then I'll usually just pull it over the top a little bit, because if anything is going to start to give away, it's going to be there. Because it's so small, sometimes the water can come out of it pretty darn easy. So we just want to make sure that we're going to still have enough water in that so it doesn't pop off and spraying it down with the sealer and the release will also help that. There we go. Hit an air bubble inside there I wasn't thrilled with. And then your pry point, I usually don't let it go any more than half of my wall height, because once you pop it from there, it's usually plenty tall enough, and we use a pretty good bar to get in there. So that's why we make them a little bit wider than you would for a normal screwdriver. Oh, it's coming off.
Of course it is.
A little bit of spring. Don't want to put my knife in your face. I'm being very careful about how far down my pry area goes. I don't want to go very far. Got to at least be able to fit the head of that pry bar in there. It's fighting now. Not wanting to stay. Super glue on wet clay. Back to school. Super glue doesn't work on wet clay. Okay.
Gorilla glue, water activated.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Just giving that another little squirt. And usually we do overkill when it comes to this, but I would rather do that than suffer the consequences. And we've all had that time when we have forgotten to put in pry zones, and somehow you still always are able to do it. So we have our keys, our pry points, keys on the other side, which you don't see at this angle. But now we're going to have to let this dry a little bit, because we need all of this to be fairly leathery before we can spray on our sealer and mold release. So we'll probably have to send everyone on a momentary break, and we'll probably be back maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so while that dries and we can get our sealer and our mold release on. So if anyone else has any questions, we'll check some of them while we're on break. But thank you everyone for coming out and checking this out and supporting us. It's awesome of you guys to be so excited about this. I mean, we all have our hobbies and our things that we enjoy, and it's so cool when they kind of intersect. I mean, Creature brings a lot of people together. I met some pretty cool people over the last 6 months or so, and you know who you are. Thank you very much for your help and your support, and all the photos and music, themes, everything. So we're gonna make this a hell of an adventure and a great cause to do it for. So thank you, everyone, and we'll be back in about give us about 20 minutes or so.